Her Head, a short story written and narrated by Robert Fairhead from the Tall and True writer's website. Cassie lay perfectly still in bed, staring at the shadowy shape on the ceiling overhead. A bulky body and 8 legs. A spider. But this wasn't Incy Wincy. It was a huntsman, with long hairy legs, needle-sharp fangs, and a jump so powerful that if human, it could win gold at the pole vault without a pole. Stay still, Cassie reminded herself, having read somewhere how huntsmen have poor eyesight but can detect the movement of large objects. If only the large object of Peter, her ex-boyfriend, was sleeping beside her. Cassie could elbow him awake and ask him to relocate the spider to the balcony, or oblivion. "I'd rather you didn't do that." A silky voice invaded Cassie's head. "What?" she internally retorted, now frozen with fear and no longer needing to remind herself to stay still. "I'd rather not end up in oblivion," the voice in her head repeated. "Are you talking to me?" Cassie asked silently, wide-open eyes fixed on the shadowy shape. "Yes," the huntsman's voice replied, "and please don't kill me, because I don't intend you any harm, and I'd like to stay alive." Cassie's mouth felt dry, and she was glad they weren't talking aloud, because she could only manage a mute croak. Oh, how she wished Peter were here, to dispatch the huntsman. "Peter had a phobia about spiders too, remember?" the voice said, "and he would have hidden under the doona." The huntsman was right. Peter was a coward with creepy crawlies and slithery creatures. Cassie recalled the singles Thailand tour, where they'd met, and how Peter wouldn't pose for the group photograph with snakes draped around their necks at the Bangkok temple. "So you're afraid of spiders, but not snakes. Why?" the huntsman asked, reading her recollections. "I don't know," Cassie replied voicelessly. "Maybe it's your hairy legs and sharp fangs." The huntsman bobbed up and down, as if nodding, or was it preparing to launch itself onto her? Cassie let out a panicky squeal. "Relax," the spider said, stretching the sibilance of the X like an invocation of a calming meditation mantra. "I won't hurt you." Cassie had heard that before. Peter had promised something similar when he told her about his reunion weekend. "Relax. Nothing will happen. I'm just meeting up with old friends." And an old girlfriend, Cassie thought sadly. "You used to be brave," the voice in her head interrupted her melancholy. "How would you know?" Cassie shot back suspiciously. "I've read huntsman spiders only live for 2 years. You didn't know me before Peter moved in." "Ah, but you're not allowing for innate knowledge and memories," the huntsman replied. "No one teaches spiders to spin webs. It's an inherited skill." "But huntsmen don't spin webs," Cassie retorted, still wary. Cassie experienced a strange sensation in her head. It was a vibration, like a massage machine, gently relaxing a tight muscle. And then she realized it was the huntsman's spider, chuckling. "Ha ha 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 ha. You were brave and curious, Cassie," it said, "before you met Peter." The huntsman was right again. Cassie had been more independent before meeting Peter on the Thailand tour, but he'd been her first serious boyfriend, and changing her ways and bending to his wishes seemed to be the rights of being in a relationship. Without knowing why, Cassie started explaining this to the huntsman, and at some point during their long conversation, she crossed a line and slipped off to sleep. When Cassie woke the next day, the no longer scary spider was still there, but she had dispatched sad thoughts about Peter from in her head. Ha 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 ha. Hi, I'm Robert Fairhead from Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True writer's website. I wrote In Her Head for the Not Quite Right Prize for Flash Fiction in July 2023. The challenge for the competition, run by the Not Quite Right podcast, was to create an original piece of fiction based on 2 typical writing prompts, plus 1 anti-prompt. Writers had 60 hours to write and submit 600-word stories, which had to feature the word right, either in full or within a longer word, providing the original spelling was retained, include the action of crossing a line, though it wasn't necessary to use the exact wording, and break the avoid all adverbs rule. I found the prompt to break the rule to avoid all adverbs challenging, and I kept confusing adverbs with adjectives. But the adverbs prompt gave me a huntsman spider with long hairy legs and needle-sharp fangs for my protagonist Cassie to stare at, frozen with fear, on the ceiling over her bed. Then it occurred to me, What if they had a conversation? Would they speak aloud or in her head? These questions gave me my title, storyline, satisfying the other two criteria, and callback denouement. And while I may have failed the adverb challenge, and my story didn't win or get longlisted for the prize, I loved writing in her head. I hope you enjoyed my spidery tale. You can read In Her Head and all my short stories, blog posts and other writing at tallandtrue.com. You can also buy my short story collections from the Amazon Kindle, Apple Books and Kobo online bookstores. Links are available in the show notes. The next episode of Tall and True Short Reads will be released shortly. In the meantime, please check your feed or the podcast website, tallandtrueshortreads.com, for earlier episodes from all 4 seasons. And follow or subscribe to the podcast and rate and review it via your favourite app. Doing so helps me share my storytelling. You can support the podcast financially by making a small one-off or regular donation via the Acast supporter page. You'll find a link in the show notes. Finally, please tell your family and friends about Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True Writers website.